Today, we're going to be taking this shotgun blank and turning it into this. We'll start at the jointer, flattening one face and one edge. Carpenter turned woodworker. It's the story for most of us woodworkers. Well, for the first 5 years of woodworking, I pretty much just locked myself in the shop and learned how to build jewelry boxes with hand-cut dovetails. My golden ratio for my jewelry boxes is at 10.5 inches in length and 9 inches for my width, and the height right around 6 inches for the majority of my boxes. Let's say I've had some trials and errors and threw some wood in the burn pile, but jewelry boxes quickly became my favorite thing to build. Here on YouTube, I've built a reputation over the last 2 years of taking cheap wood and turning it into awesome project ideas. There's a good bit of money that you can make by doing so. It's been an absolute blast, and I'll continue to do so. However, I wanted to switch things up and show y'all what my real passion is with woodworking, and that's taking this fine hardwood and turning it into an elegant piece. The wood I'm using is a fiddleback Claro walnut. To get this resawn, I'll be using my bandsaw, but I'll switch out my 1/2 inch 5 TPI for a 3/4 inch 3 TPI resaw blade. I got these off of Amazon for fairly cheap. I'll leave a link in the description where you can pick one up today. The thickness of my walnut is right over 8/4, so it's right at 2 5/8 of an inch. What I want to do is get 2 pieces resawn to 3/8 of an inch, and that'll be for my front and my back. And I want my 2 sides to be right over 5/8 of an inch thick. This will all make sense shortly. With over 25 years experience as a carpenter, I started a business back 10 years ago, building custom homes. I now have 14 full-time employees and my woodworking business. Also, I have a farm and a family. And for the past 2 years, the YouTube channel. It can be quite the juggle, especially when my woodworking hobby became lucrative. But I always carve out that time for puppy time and time for my family. Now it's time to lay out some dovetails. I want my tails to be on the front piece and the back piece, so I'll get the thickness set for my sides and scribe my front and back pieces. My front piece will have a drawer, so I'll do 5 3/4 inch dovetails going from the top down, and I'll leave about 2 inches worth of board to work for my drawer. I know just how intimidating dovetails can be, but trust me when I tell you, it is totally worth figuring them out and learning how to do them for your projects to add that spunk and some value. And to be honest, it's actually really rewarding when you cut your first dovetail and it fits just right. When cutting my dovetails, I use the Cat's Moses 6-to-1 dovetail jig. I like the 6-to-1 ratio because it adds the depth that I'm looking for my tails and the pins, and it gives it more of the 3D effect that we all like. On my back piece, I'll do 6 1-inch dovetails. Now I need to focus back on my front piece and get this drawer released from the rest of the board. I'll pull up from the bottom at 2 inches and get this cut over at the table saw. Damn geese. Now I need to clean up the bottom of these dovetails that I just released from that drawer. Next, we'll go ahead and transfer the thickness of the front and back pieces to our sides and get our pins marked out and cut out. When transferring the tailboard to both of my pin boards, I'll make sure to hold everything flush to the top. When chiseling out my waist, I make sure that I have a nice sharp chisel, and I always start from the back side, whether it be the pin board or the tailboard, and I'll work my way down halfway, and then I'll spin it around and do the rest from the top. That way, I avoid any kind of blowout. Now my drawer will have those marking wheel lines that we made before we cut our tails. So what I need to do is get these cut over at my miter saw, getting them cut right up to those marking wheel lines. That way we get the perfect fit. I'll use the remaining stock of my walnut to cut 4 drawer sides. I'll have a front, 2 sides, and the back we're going to do something a little bit different than your traditional drawer. I want my thickness for my drawer frame to be at 3/8 of an inch thick, so I'll resaw 4 pieces to 3/8 of an inch. I want the height of my drawers to be the same exact height as the drawer face, so I'll get those ripped over here at the table saw. I'll cut a 45-degree bevel on the front of each side and a 45-degree bevel on both sides of the front piece. The back side of my 2 sides will be square, and I'll show you all that method to the madness in just a second. Instead of using my tape measure to measure out the length of my drawer sides, I like to just stick them inside of the box and make a mark. That way I can sneak right up on the perfect fit. I'll dry fit my 2 sides and put my face on to make sure I got the right fit. And then I'll mark out a dado at the bottom of the 2 sides for my back piece. Constructing my drawers in this way allow for full access to the drawer without having to pull the whole drawer out from the box. Now we'll cut some dados to fit our drawer bottom. I like using MDF for all of my box bottoms. It just helps with the movement throughout the seasons. I'll be applying some flocking fibers to the bottom of my drawer and my box. I love using this flocking fiber. However, the adhesive for this stuff is outrageously expensive. So instead of using the adhesive, I'll just use the same color spray paint, putting on 2 coats and then applying my flocking fibers. Add a dab of glue. I'm installing a 1/4 inch straight bit into my router table. I'll use this straight bit to route out the dados for the runners in my drawer sides, and then I'll transfer those marks over to our box on the sides. I'll cut a piece of walnut to fit right inside of those dados on my sides to act as the runners. Now I'll get my dados routed out in my actual box sides for my box bottom, and I'll be using some flocking on my box bottom as well. I'll add a dab of glue and get my box glued together. You may notice some micro gaps, but I'm not too concerned about the micro gaps because I can easily hide that with some sandpaper, glue, and a little bit of sawdust. Next, I'll glue in my runners, and I'll just use some CA glue for my runners, and that should hold just fine. Before I glue my drawer face on, I want to go ahead and cut out the notch for my drawer pull. I'll be using this solid piece of copper, and I'll just trace this out and get it cut out with my hand saws. Next, I'll cut my top pieces for my lid. I'm going to be cutting these to 3/8 of an inch thick. I'll make the sides 1 1/4 inches wide, and the front and back I'll make 1 inch in width. For the joinery on the lid, I'll be using a through mortise and tenon or bridle joint. I'm routing out a 1/4 inch dado to hold a 1/4 inch piece of acrylic for the top. I'll be using some side rail jewelry box hinges for my box. So I need to cut in 4 different dados for each part of the hinge. 2 on the box bottom and 2 on the lid. I'm going to add a slight bevel to my lid to give it a little bit of depth. On the front of my jewelry box, I'm going to make a round over on both corners, creating a bow front. Where the lid meets the top of the box, at the center, I'm going to add an indentation for finger grab. And I'll use this little cylinder sander that I picked up from Lowe's, and I use this thing almost daily in my shop. Now it's time to get rid of those micro gaps, and I'll just spread some glue along the joints and hit it with some 150 grit sandpaper and watch those micro gaps disappear. I'll add a walnut tray to the top of this box. I'm going to order some wingay that I'll be using to add as some dividers in that tray. I really think the wingay is going to be a crazy contrast for this walnut.
Winning! Oh, that's beautiful.
While I get this box finished up, I've got a huge favor to ask. Be sure that you head down below, smack that like button, but also hit that subscribe button. It's absolutely free and it really does help the channel grow. Thanks for watching. Here's a quick rundown of the finish. I do 2 parts shellac, sand it down to 400 grit by hand, and then I'll finish it up with some spray lacquer.